biblical tales. God floods the earth, sparing Noah, his family, and 2 of every animal on board his ark.
Now, an international team of researchers have found new evidence that a famous formation in Turkey could be the site of the ancient vessel.
High in Turkey's mountains, researchers uncovered buried structures beneath a strange, boat-shaped formation, rekindling global fascination and reigniting the age-old question, could this be the resting place of Noah's Ark? Scientists and historians are captivated, not by proof, but by the possibilities. Could this remote slope hold echoes of a story as old as time? And if so, what other ancient truths might it unveil? Come along as we reveal what scientists found inside Noah's Ark in Turkey that terrifies the world. Unusual boat-like formation discovered. Right below Mount Ararat, where the mountains rise high, there's a valley that holds a mystery people haven't stopped talking about. This isn't just a regular patch of dirt. At first glance, it seems like plain dirt, but carved into the ground is a giant ship-shaped outline that's hard to ignore. The locals call it the Durupinar Formation, and it stretches close to 540 feet from end to end. People have been asking the same question for years. Could this be the final resting spot of Noah's Ark? The buzz started way back in the 1950s, when a Turkish army officer spotted the odd formation from the sky. From up there, it looked like a ship just frozen in time, half buried in the mountain. Word traveled fast, from tiny villages to international newsrooms. By the 1960s, the BBC had boots on the ground filming, and National Geographic photographers were clambering over hills with cameras, hoping they were about to witness one of the greatest archaeological finds in history. And it wasn't just a random pile of rocks. Over the years, this strange site has attracted all kinds: scientists, skeptics, believers, adventurers. People came from all over the world just to see it. One of them was Professor Faruk Kaya. Quiet guy, super into ancient mysteries. From a worn-out tent near the ridge, he once said standing on the formation felt like stepping onto the backbone of some long-lost beast. He said the air there was so still it felt like time had hit pause. Kaya and his crew got to work, measuring, digging, collecting dirt. And what they found was odd. The dimensions of the formation almost perfectly matched the ancient measurements of Noah's Ark. Too spot on to just shrug off. Kaya didn't jump to wild conclusions, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something about the place didn't quite make sense. Then things got weirder. Geologists discovered that the formation was made mostly of limonite, an iron-heavy material. Not exactly what you'd expect in a ship-shaped mound. So what is it? A fluke of nature? Or maybe a long-forgotten chunk of human history? In 2021, a research team from Istanbul, Agri, and Andrews University in the United States showed up with some pretty high-tech gear. They drilled deep into the formation, hoping to see what was hiding beneath the surface. What they found raised eyebrows. The soil there had almost 3 times more organic material and potassium than the surrounding area. That could mean old, decayed wood, or something that had been alive and buried a really long time. Then came the radar scans. What showed up under the ground? Straight lines, boxy shapes, patterns that looked suspiciously like rooms or hallways. If someone were out there hunting for the bones of an ancient ship, this is exactly what they'd want to see. More findings added fuel to the mystery. Dirt samples showed signs of a giant flood, marine clay, traces of sea creatures, and sediments that had clearly been shaped by water. And when experts dated those samples, they pointed back anywhere between 3,500 and 5,000 years ago, the same general time frame mentioned in old flood legends. Naturally, the media went wild. The news dropped headlines hinting that maybe this old tale had more truth than fiction. Conferences lit up with heated debates, and people around the world waited, wondering if this was it. If a piece of ancient history had just cracked through the surface. Still, not everyone's convinced. Some scientists remain skeptical. They say nature can pull off some pretty strange tricks, And just because the dirt looks like a boat doesn't mean it is one. Tim Newcomb from Popular Mechanics echoed what many experts are saying. Even if there's evidence of human work, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the Ark. Even Kaya himself admitted the clues are fascinating, but it's not case closed. And yet, people keep showing up. For the villagers nearby, the formation is a mix of mystery and local pride. For the researchers, it's a giant question mark carved into the hillside. And for dreamers watching from across the world, it's like a ghost from history that refuses to disappear. Cutting-edge tech reveals buried structure. It started with a strange shadow on a hillside, one that looked far too much like a ship to be a coincidence. With curiosity thick in the air, a group of scientists huddled at the Durupanar site, eager to pull back the curtain on a mystery buried beneath a strange boat-shaped hill. For ages, people argued whether this odd formation was just a natural fluke or the fossilized bones of Noah's Ark itself. But this time, the team came armed with gear that could peek through both stone and time. It all began with the low hum of generators and the careful setup of ground-penetrating radar. Andrew Jones, a researcher who'd spent over a decade examining the site, stood quietly beside the machines. He told the crew from the Science Channel's Forbidden History that they weren't there to chase legends, but rather to let the data speak for itself. Meanwhile, some of the techs on the team didn't even know this spot had biblical ties. Then came the first scan. As the images lit up their screens, the room shifted. Doubt gave way to disbelief. The radar pulses dove deep into the ground and bounced back with shapes, clear shapes. Instead of the usual mess of rock and soil, they saw sharp angles and straight lines. One of the operators, clearly taken aback, told Fox News Digital that what appeared on the scans didn't resemble anything nature would typically produce. The scans revealed a central hallway stretching nearly 234 feet, flanked by evenly spaced side chambers. Everything was laid out in precise right angles, something that almost never occurs in nature. In the tent, the energy spiked. William Crabtree, the team's lead soil scientist, stared at the data, a mix of awe and nerves in his eyes. He told the news that the soil inside the structure appeared completely different, noting it contained significantly more organic matter and potassium, just the sort of composition one might expect from the remnants of decayed wood. And then came the resistivity scans, another tool in their arsenal. These scans used electric currents to map underground resistance. What they revealed left the team buzzing. The boat-like hull seemed to plunge more than 40 feet beneath the surface. Curved ribs arched below, just like in a ship. And there weren't just ribs. There were 3 separate decks, stacked one over the other. A central stairway appeared to run straight through them, just as the Ark's description suggested. "This wasn't built by accident," said John Larson, the New Zealand engineer who headed the resistivity team. "This thing was put together, purposefully." It didn't take long for the media to jump in. NDTV ran with "Noah's Ark discovered," while the New York Post shouted about "fully preserved secrets." Christian Broadcasting Network interviewed Jones himself. He spoke of tunnels, deck-like structures, corridors, all fitting the Ark's blueprint. "If you were looking for a man-made ship," he said, "this is exactly what you'd expect to find." As more results poured in, the team noticed something odd. The grass growing on top of the formation was a slightly different shade from the rest of the hillside. A subtle clue, but a clue nonetheless. "It's like a living fingerprint," Crabtree told Newsbomb. "Whatever's down there is literally changing the soil." Inside the site, the earth held double the usual amount of organic matter. Potassium levels, 40% higher. Signs of rotting wood, buried for thousands of years. Some scans even showed cracked and damaged sections, like a vessel that had once slid downhill and slammed into rock. Advanced software let the team filter out mud and isolate denser materials. What they saw resembled a massive ship hull, streamlined and symmetrical, its ribs still intact after all this time. But the most jaw-dropping moment came when everything began to match the ancient blueprint. 3 decks, a central hallway, rooms flanking both sides, and possibly even a staircase. Each new detail blurred the line between story and reality. Still, the researchers stayed cautious. But the clues were stacking up, and the world was watching closely. The Noah's Ark scans team announced plans to continue with drilling and non-destructive studies. They were racing against time and the region's brutal winters, hoping to preserve the site before the elements could wash away its secrets. The Durupinar Formation. You wouldn't think much of it driving by, but beneath this Turkish hillside, something strange is going on. For years, this oddly shaped mound in Durupinar has been at the center of non-stop curiosity and controversy. Some experts call it a natural formation, a synclinal basin shaped by earthquakes, mudslides, and time itself. Veteran geologist Dr. Lawrence Collins, a loud skeptic of biblical archaeology, insists it's nothing more than nature showing off. To geologists like Collins, the Durupinar Formation is simply the result of tectonic chaos, no human hands involved. But that theory starts to crack when you look beneath the surface. That's where Turkish geophysicist Dr. Ahmet Özbek and his team come in. Using ground-penetrating radar, they scanned deep into the mound, and what they found was anything but random. Symmetrical chambers, sharp right angles, a corridor over 200 feet long. Özbek held up the 3D scans and stated plainly that nature doesn't create corridors. Suddenly, the story shifts. What if this isn't just a pile of rocks? What if it's the fossilized remains of something built? Things got even more intense when scientists tested the soil inside. They found unusually high levels of organic material and potassium, classic signs of long-decayed wood. Dr. Jessica Parks, a biogeochemist at Oxford, ran high-tech tests and found something wild: lignin derivatives, compounds only found in wood. "This isn't just dirt," she said. "It's the ghost of a structure." Of course, not everyone's convinced. Some say decaying plants, animal dens, or even termite colonies could leave behind similar traces. And so, the mystery grows. Local legends fan the flames even more. In nearby Uzengili village, elders talk about strange finds from their childhoods. One farmer swears his grandfather once found iron rivets in the soil. Another local uncovered a chunk of iron-rich stone in 2002 with what looked like tool marks. Meanwhile, the media can't get enough. Ancient Aliens aired a dramatic episode calling the site a prehistoric shipyard. National Geographic, in contrast, leaned into science, showing how floods and mud flows might have sculpted the shape over centuries. Dr. Aisha Rahman, a religious studies professor, summed it up perfectly. This isn't just about science, it's about what people want to see. That's exactly what makes Durupinar so fascinating. It's not just a mound, it's a mirror, reflecting our beliefs, our questions, and our need to connect to something bigger. Tourism tells the same story. Some visitors come looking for the Ark, while others just want to see what the fuss is about. One minute you're buying a miniature Ark from a gift shop. The next you're standing on a hill wondering if ancient history happened right here. Tour guides reportedly aim to strike a balance, emphasizing that they provide facts rather than fairy tales. Though visitors frequently request to hear the Noah version of the story, the surge in tourism has created some friction. A local teacher mentioned that what was once a peaceful area has now become crowded with buses, cameras, and tourists who often treat local stories with amusement. In 2025, things got even more serious. The Turkish government approved limited core drilling at the site to dig deeper, literally and figuratively. Some researchers cheered. Conservationists worried it could destroy whatever truth might be buried there. Meanwhile, theologians and historians are watching closely. Rabbi David Volpa wrote in Time, "Whether it's man-made or natural, this mound reminds us how powerful stories can be. The Ark isn't just a boat, it's a symbol of survival and hope." And maybe that's what Durupinar is really about. Whether carved by water or crafted by ancient hands, this formation has already etched itself into modern history. Not just as a geological curiosity, but as a symbol of humanity's constant search for meaning. It's a place where science and spirit collide, and where every layer of dirt could be a page in a much bigger story. As the sun sets behind Mount Ararat and the shadows stretch across the valley, the mound stands still, quiet, mysterious, unresolved. What secrets still lie beneath? And how close are we to rewriting everything we thought we knew? Chemical imprints and soil mysteries. What if the ground beneath our feet could remember? Beneath the quiet hills of Durupinar in eastern Turkey, something strange lies hidden. A giant boat-shaped mound that's been the center of wild theories for decades. But now, science is stepping in, and what researchers are finding in the soil might just flip history on its head. On a calm morning, a team of scientists gathered around the formation, not to dig up bones or treasure, but to scoop up soil. They were hunting for microscopic clues, organic traces, chemical signatures, things you can't see, but that can whisper secrets from thousands of years ago. The first scoop? Nearly black, with a damp, earthy smell, bagged, tagged. Sent to a nearby lab buzzing with machines and quiet excitement. Then the results came in, and they were wild. The soil from inside the structure held nearly 3 times the amount of organic material compared to the dirt just a few feet away. Lead researcher Andrew Jones told Fox News Digital, "It's a strong sign of decayed wood or other organic matter." But that was just the start. Potassium levels? Off the charts. Acidity? Way higher than normal. These are the kinds of chemical fingerprints that show up when organic material, like wood, has been breaking down for centuries. Geologist Kaya explained it to the Jerusalem Post. The elevated potassium and low pH levels suggest something big once decayed here, probably a large wooden structure. Even National Geographic noted the soil's unusual chemistry, saying it's the kind of signal you just don't find in nature by accident. As the scientists kept digging, figuratively, not literally, the evidence kept stacking up. The Science Channel's Forbidden History team, filming the process, captured the moment it clicked. These chemical markers might actually belong to something that was built, lived in, and then lost to time. Soil expert William Crabtree was nearly speechless. This soil isn't natural. Its makeup screams decayed wood. But what makes this even more fascinating is the ripple it's causing. Journalists from around the globe are now watching, torn between excitement and skepticism. Some think this might finally be the missing link that gives new weight to the ancient tale of Noah's Ark. Others remind us to tread carefully. Big claims need solid proof. Still, for the team knee-deep in the dirt, the message is clear. The ground doesn't lie. Durupinar isn't just some odd-shaped bump in the landscape anymore. It's become a place where science meets legend, where every speck of soil tells a story. And as the sun dips behind the mountains and researchers pack up their samples, one thing is certain. Whatever happened here left behind more than just questions. It left behind a chemical echo strong enough to still be heard today. And maybe, just maybe, this is only the beginning of a much bigger story. Something feels off. It was supposed to be just another scan, until the ground revealed something it shouldn't have. What started as a routine radar sweep under a quiet Turkish hillside quickly turned into a jaw-dropping moment. Scientists, expecting the usual mess of rocks and mud, suddenly froze. The images on their screens weren't random. They were patterned, structured, and completely out of place. The Earth, it turns out, was hiding something. Big. At around 30 feet deep, ground-penetrating radar lit up with a bizarre network. Perfect rectangles, stacked chambers, a long corridor, and what looked like ancient wooden beams turned to stone. Lead researcher Dr. Andrew Jones, barely keeping it together, told the news that it looked like the skeleton of a ship, and not just any ship, one massive enough to match the Bible's description of the ark. Then came the soil samples, and they told a darker, wetter story. Buried layers of marine sediment, traces of algae, shell fragments, silt, and when the lab ran carbon dating tests, jaws dropped again. The material was around 4,800 years old. Marine archaeologist Dr. Elena Marquez told the news that the timing was strikingly close to the biblical flood narrative, suggesting it was no coincidence. She explained that the evidence pointed to a flood powerful enough to not only alter the landscape, but possibly leave a lasting imprint on human memory as well. Suddenly, even religious scholars who used to shrug off the ark as pure myth started raising eyebrows. In an interview with Science magazine, geologist Dr. Lin Chen cautioned that features like marine layers and wood decay are typical in floodplain regions, urging researchers not to mistake ordinary geological formations for extraordinary events. Despite such skepticism, even some critics acknowledged the structure's unusually precise layout. LiDAR scans revealed a formation that closely mirrored the Bible's description of the ark's 3 decks. And then came the real curveball, a sealed chamber deep underground. Thermal scans showed something hollow inside. Sonar picked up hints of metal. Tools? Artifacts? Something else? The scientists didn't dare guess, but that didn't stop imaginations from running wild. The History Channel wasted no time and launched a special called Ark's Final Secret, showing a fictional dig that uncovers Noah's bones. It broke viewership records, but the researchers weren't amused. Still, it became political fast. Turkey's government fast-tracked excavation permits, hoping to turn the site into a tourism hotspot. UNESCO wasn't thrilled and warned the dig could permanently damage the area. Meanwhile, local imams started leading prayers at the site as drones buzzed overhead, capturing footage. Kurdish guide Azad Kamal told Al Jazeera that the site served as a bridge between worlds, though he noted that not everyone might be prepared for the destination it pointed to. As night falls over the Darupanar site, one chilling question remains. What if the Ark was real? Not just a metaphor or a Sunday school story, but an actual vessel, a survivor from a drowned world, a structure whose story might be woven into every ancient culture's memory. The scans hint at answers. But for now, the truth is still buried, and maybe that's scarier than finding it, because some legends, once unearthed, might not just rewrite history, they could change everything. Lost section of Jerusalem's ancient wall. You won't believe what archaeologists just dug up on the eastern slope of Jerusalem, and yes, it connects straight to the Bible. So, archaeologists just uncovered another chunk of the ancient city wall that once wrapped around Jerusalem. And yes, the same wall people have been digging up bits of for decades. But this latest find connects with sections they already knew about. Kind of like finding the missing piece of a really old puzzle. It was discovered on the eastern slope of the city, and that's not all. Along with the wall, they found some pretty wild stuff. A Babylonian stamped seal, a bulla with ancient Hebrew writing, and a bunch of old vessels. Experts believe the wall dates all the way back to the Iron Age, lining up perfectly with biblical accounts, like in 2 Kings chapter 25, where it says the Babylonians smashed through Jerusalem's walls. The Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser. When a British explorer stumbled across a strange monument in the sands of Nimrud, he had no idea he'd found the world's oldest image of a biblical figure. The Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III is more than just an ancient monument. It's a 2-meter-tall stone time capsule carved from black limestone, dating all the way back to the 9th century before Christ. Discovered in the year 1846 by Sir Austen Henry Layard among the ruins of Nimrud in Iraq. This striking piece was taken and now sits in the British Museum in London, far from the land where it was born. Etched across its surface are 20 carved panels, each one telling a different story. kings from distant lands bringing tribute to the powerful Assyrian ruler. One panel in particular stands out. It shows King Jehu of Israel kneeling before Shalmaneser. This isn't just artistic flair, it's the earliest known image of a biblical figure. For historians and scholars, it's a big deal. It confirms real-world interaction between the Assyrian Empire and the ancient kingdom of Israel, aligning closely with what's written in the Bible. But here's where it gets more interesting. If one part of the Bible lines up with historical evidence, does that mean everything in it is literal history? Not quite. The Bible is more like a library, a collection of books, each with its purpose and style. But others are poetry, law, prophecy, letters, and wisdom. Many weren't even intended as historical records. They were written at different times by different people, and only much later grouped into one book. So while some parts do echo the past with uncanny accuracy, others speak more to belief, philosophy, and tradition, not just cold, hard facts. The Moabite stone. At first glance, it's just a cracked black stone, but this artifact holds a version of events that does not quite match what Scripture says. The Moabite stone, also known as the Mesha Stele, is one of those ancient relics that quietly rewrites what we thought we knew. It was discovered in 1868 near the town of Dibon in modern-day Jordan, and it comes from the long-lost kingdom of Moab, dating back to around 840 years before Christ. Carved from dark basalt, the stone holds an inscription commissioned by King Mesha of Moab. Like many rulers of the time, Mesha used this as a bragging board of sorts, a record of his triumphs, especially his victory over the Israelites. But this isn't just royal propaganda. It's also a rare peek into how ancient kings shaped their own legacies. Interestingly, the story Mesha tells on this stone echoes an event also found in the Bible, specifically in 2 Kings chapter 3, though the two versions don't exactly match up. What makes this artifact even more fascinating is the language. The inscription is written in the Moabite tongue, closely related to ancient Hebrew, offering scholars valuable insights into how people communicated and worshipped. Mesha thanks his god Chemosh for the victory, but also references Yahweh, the God of Israel, showing just how deeply religion and politics were entwined in that era. Beyond its historical and religious significance, the Moabite stone stands out as one of the earliest non-biblical references to Israel, a silent witness from a time when myth and history often walked hand in hand. Jericho excavations. For generations, the fall of Jericho has been taught as fact, yet every excavation seems to dig up more questions than answers. The famous Bible story of Jericho tells of a city sealed tight behind towering walls and locked gates, keeping the Israelites firmly out. This tale appears in the book of Joshua, and it unfolds with a curious set of instructions. The Israelites were told to march around the city's walls once a day for 6 days, then circle it 7 times on the 7th day, all while blowing horns and shouting. According to the account, it was this strange ritual, the marching, the noise, the faith, that brought the mighty walls crumbling to the ground. Once the walls collapsed, the Israelites stormed the city, killing every living thing inside, even the animals, sparing only Rahab and her household, as promised. It's a dramatic, powerful story, no doubt. But here's the twist. Despite countless archaeological digs and determined efforts to find proof, there's no solid evidence backing the biblical version. Excavations at Jericho in the early 20th century initially looked promising. Researchers thought they'd found the very walls mentioned in the Bible. But it didn't hold up. Later studies revealed that those walls belonged to a completely different period. Again and again, archaeologists tried to align the findings with the story of Joshua, but the timelines refused to cooperate. The evidence actually points to the city being destroyed long before the Israelites were even supposed to be there, possibly by an Egyptian campaign, and that Jericho may have been empty during the era Joshua was said to lead his conquest. The idea of bending archaeology to validate biblical stories has largely been dismissed by scholars. And when it comes to the story of Jericho's fall, the facts just don't match the faith. For many historians, the book of Joshua reads more like folklore or national mythology than a record of literal events. The Nebo Sarsekim. One of the more quietly fascinating discoveries in biblical archaeology is the Nebo Sarsekim tablet, a small clay artifact dating back to around 595 years before Christ. It was unearthed in the ruins of Sippar, near present-day Baghdad in Iraq. At first glance, it might look unremarkable, but this little tablet has stirred up quite a bit of attention, especially because of its connection to the book of Jeremiah. The tablet mentions a Babylonian official named Nebo Sarsekim, the very same name that appears in Jeremiah chapter 39, verse 3, where he is listed as one of the high-ranking men present during the Babylonian siege of Jerusalem in 587 before Christ. That link alone has thrilled both scholars and believers alike. What's recorded on the tablet is a donation made by Nebo Sarsekim to a Babylonian temple. Not a war record, but still a sign that he was a real person living at that time. To many, this discovery offers compelling evidence that the author of the book of Jeremiah had detailed knowledge of actual events and real individuals, which certainly strengthens the historical credibility of that specific passage. But here's the nuance. It confirms the existence of Nebo Sarsekim, yes, but it doesn't validate every single claim made in the book. That's where things often get tricky. Some people want to leap from this one confirmation to the belief that the entire Old Testament is historically airtight. But that's not how history works. Just because one detail checks out doesn't automatically authenticate everything else around it. Every claim requires its own proof. And when it comes to ancient texts, especially religious ones, there's a constant dance between faith and fact. In the end, believing the Bible is still, and always has been, an act of faith. No piece of clay can or should define that. And while finding historical support is exciting, it doesn't give anyone the license to present belief as absolute fact. Faith doesn't need to be proven to be meaningful, and history doesn't need to be rewritten to make room for belief. Inside Noah's Ark in Turkey. Something was found high in the Turkish mountains, and according to some, it's got people seriously unsettled. So, according to some guy online, what was supposedly found inside Noah's Ark in Turkey has people seriously spooked. The hunt for this ancient vessel has been going on for decades, ever since folks started taking every single Bible story as literal truth. Back in 1959, a Turkish army captain stumbled across a strange, boat-shaped formation in the mountains. It later got named after him, the Durupanar Formation, and many began to believe this might be the spot where Noah's Ark came to rest after the flood. Determined believers kept digging. Then a group of evangelical Christian explorers went poking around Mount Ararat's volcanic debris, and lo and behold, they found the Ark. It's curious how the people most convinced it exists always seem to be the ones to discover it. And yet, the find lacks any solid archaeological backing. One Middle Eastern archaeology expert even said he's never heard of an expedition that didn't find the Ark, which kind of says a lot. This latest group claimed they discovered 7 huge wooden compartments way up on Mount Ararat, about 13,000 feet above sea level, back in 2007 and 2008. They even brought a film crew the following year and did their own carbon dating. According to them, the wood is roughly 4,800 years old, just the right age to match up with the biblical flood. And they're keeping the exact location under wraps. Wouldn't want any pesky scientists showing up with real tools and questions, would we? So here we are. Some parts of the Bible may be rooted in history, others might be metaphor or myth. One thing's for sure, when you're digging through the deep past, nothing is ever simple. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.